Hey, Rebel Bankers, welcome back to the Real Estate Money School. I'm your host, Chris Noggle, and I'm joined today by another fellow money guy, and his name's Chris Miles with Money Ripples. So, today is going to be wild. I don't even know where this podcast episode is going to go, but it's going to be amazing because it's going to be all money, all about you, and all about how you can change your game, your mind, and everything you're doing, because that's what Chris does. That's what I do. And we're going to dive deep into the money plan and what he does for a living. But, let me just I'm going to go totally off topic. But one of the fun things is a lot of people in their lives are so focused on working toward retirement, right? That's such a big thing. Well, Chris has now retired twice, and he's now semi-retired. And we're going to talk about two retirements and what that looks like, how it happened, and why it happened. So we're going to dive into that. And there's so much we can talk about. His book, get a load of this, folks. And some of you, this might go right over your head, but his book is called Beyond Rice and Beans. So, oh my gosh, there's so much fun stuff. And Chris, I'm not gonna let this one slide. You're gonna talk about this ballroom dancing, man. I got that one circled here, so we're gonna hit that one. But before we get into Chris's story, let's just take a moment and talk about all of you and your journey to becoming a Rebel Banker. Now, that journey involves knowledge. It involves you going out there, learning, seeking the knowledge, and then taking action. But the action part's the hardest part. If Warren Buffett says buy low, sell high, and don't lose money, we all think we understand that, but do we? Because the thing I see is so many people forget step number 2, which is sell high, and therefore they lose money. But Warren Buffett says it because all you got to do is just buy low, which you all say you're doing, and then sell high, which you're all like, oh, yeah, that's easy. And if you did that, you wouldn't lose money. So what's your excuse? But anyway, that's a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about. You all have to take that leap of faith and take action. So I'm going to give you all a challenge right here and right now. I'm going to give you something for free, and I want to see if you take action on it, because that should be an easy one, right? I'm going to give you a copy of my book, Mapping Out the Millionaire Mystery, for free. If you want it shipped, all you need to do is pay the shipping. And how about round 2? We'll go with the private money guide. You can get both of my books for free. All you got to do is pay shipping. So now let's see how many of you actually take action on that. So that's your challenge. Will you be an action taker, and will you take action that changes your life? Because that challenge I just gave you will change your life if you read, take in, and take action on this information. So Chris, welcome to the show. I'm actually excited.
Same here, Chris. It's going to be a lot of fun. I can already tell.
Oh yeah. So just tell everybody a little bit about what you do today. I know you're semi-retired. This is retirement number 2, right? I'm not mistaken with this being 3. So you're semi-retired, but what is it that you do? How do you help people? And just kind of give a little insight on that.
Yeah. I mean, so the thing that I keep doing in retirement is because nobody will let me retire. Plus I get bored anyways, right? So I've learned that both times, is that I got to do something I love. And so I love teaching. I'm a teacher at heart. That's why I do. That's why I do it on my podcast, and things like that. But the two things I usually do is I actually work with doing like the infinite banking type stuff, specifically for real estate investors. And then I do like consulting of people that say, well, I've got the cash, but how do I get it to actually do something for me? And even sometimes people are like, I wonder how I can find the money so I can invest, and that sort of thing. And so really it's like focusing on cash flow and helping people get out of the rat race so they work because they want to, not because they have to.
I love that. Work because they want to, not because they have to. When a lot of people, statistically, it shows that out of 100 people, only 5 of them are going to be financially secure into the age of retirement. Right. Not retirement number 2, but retirement number 1, which means there's going to be an awful lot of people working into 65, 75, and 85, not because they want to, but because they have to. We need to change that dynamic, and that's what Chris helps people do. So that's awesome. Now, gosh, I don't even know where to start, but one of the first things, if you go to his website, and that's Money Ripples, it says, get your money working for you. That's pretty unbelievable, because I've not found anyone else in the space that is saying that word. Yet that's a word I use all the time. Make your money work for you, and that's what you need to do. So let's start there. Like, how do people get their money to work for them?
Really, and you probably get this all the time, is you got to shift the mindset. You got to get out of an accumulation mindset and go into an acceleration mindset, right? Get out of the whole save everything, spend nothing, save it in mutual funds, save it forever. Then hopefully someday your life might not suck, right? That's kind of what it's like, in the traditional model, that accumulation model of compound interest and that sort of thing. But You know,
Well, hold on, Chris. What is your thought on compound interest? Let's just start there. I didn't mean to take you off that, but that's important.
No,
What is your view on compound interest? Do you believe in it?
it's true. It works. But that being said, it can only work within the right concept, right? Because what's happened is, and I'm sure you teach this all the time too, right? Is that banks love for you to keep your money there forever, right? You know, if you start thinking more like how a bank works or how real investors work, they don't worry about compound interest as much. They're worried about, how do I create acceleration with this money? How do I build it and grow it in a way that creates actual income, real cash flow, right? And so compound interest can work. And definitely, I know in the infinite banking world, it works great because that's a critical component to making it work, where you double dip on your real estate investments and everything else that you're doing with it. But it's overrated from the financial advising perspective, right? Because they're using it as a way to say, lock up your money, don't touch it, don't look at it, just leave it there forever.
That's
and then someday there might just be enough, right? And I get it because I taught that, like, you know, just like you, right? I did that for 4 years as the mainstream financial advisor. I was selling mutual funds. I said, you know, don't buy like whole life insurance or any of those kind of things because those things suck. You know, stock market's the way to go, right? So I was all stock market, even though I started right during Y2K, you know, like right after 9/11 happened is when I became a financial advisor. So perfect timing, right?
Me too. Holy crap. We started the exact same time.
That's awesome. Yeah. So I mean, I got to see the ins and outs. So maybe like you, like I started to run real numbers because they always taught me 10 or 12% a year compounding, right, is what you're going to earn in the market. But when I looked at the real rate of return, like, because the numbers didn't quite add up, when I started looking at actual yield versus average returns, right, especially when you have those negatives, I realized, wait a minute. And if you look right now, the S&P 500 the last 30 years is right about 7.5%, even though we're at an all-time high right now, you know? So if that's 7.5%, that's not 10 or 12. Try putting the numbers you've been saving based on what your financial planner told you to do, and then put in 7.5% instead. Oh, no, you can't put in 7.5. Sorry, you got to take out fees. So maybe you're at 6.5%, right? Before you pay taxes, you know? So you're likely to get maybe 6% a year on your money. And you start to put that in, you start to realize, wait a minute. And if I have that plus inflation, which is not 2%, because when I ran numbers as a financial advisor, 2% wasn't enough, right? I mean, I did 2% because it made me look better. It made my plan look better, but it was horrible because if I put in 4%, it was depressing, right? And the real rate of return, the real inflation rate's been closer to more like 5+%, right?
Yeah, if you factor out the things that they remove to get to that 3.2 average inflation rate, but they take out food, they take out energy, like, come on, folks, like, how are you going to take that out? Oh, well, we don't want to scare people.
Yeah, just stop driving, stop eating. You'll be fine,
right.
you know?
Yeah, ride a bike.
Yeah, so when I
eat
put
rice
in those,
and beans.
yeah, so if you put in like, you know, 5% inflation, you put in 6% rate of return on the market, you'll find out if you want a $60,000 a year lifestyle in 20 years, right? You want to retire in 20 years at a $60,000 a year lifestyle, which is not great. You got to save about $8,300 a month right now. That's over $100,000 a year. You got to start saving. So you got to save over $100,000 a year to live on $60,000 a year. That seems ridiculous.
Sounds like a great plan.
I know, it's awesome.
But you did that for 4 years. I did it for 16 long years. And it's just unbelievable. That whole time we had and I always do this, we had our rosy colored glasses on as the Mr. Big advisors. Notice it's funny too. I didn't know if you were going to show up in a suit, you know, like we're in t-shirts now and like we're the money guys. So it's just funny how the dynamic changes because back then we had to have the blue, gray, or black suit on. God forbid you wore a different color suit than that. And, you know, you always had to just follow the protocol and do what we were taught to do, which was believe in an average rate of return, which really is exactly what you just described. I do a little thing where I'd show $100 and then we make you 100%, then we lose you 50, make you 100, lose you 50, and then what do you get? Anyway, you know, average rate of return 25%. You made nothing.
Nothing. That's right.
But that's the Kool-Aid we drank, and you know, I drank it for a lot longer than you did because it's just what I knew, and what I knew was just the big lie. And I love, you know, one of the things that we pulled on your bio here is anti-financial advisor. Now, I don't think you're saying that you dislike financial advisors. I just think you're saying that we all need to kind of take an extra step or peel the onion one more time to really see the truth behind how money truly works. And it's not what you learn from your advisors. It's not what you learn from your bank. So let's kind of dive a little bit down that rabbit hole and talk a little bit about like, what is money? What is the truth behind how money works?
Well, money is just simply an exchange form, right? I mean, it flows. For me, money became easy. The reason I was able to retire quickly that first time was because I obsessed over the question, which is the root cause of money, which is how can I create more value for more people, right? Or in other words, how can I create a win-win for somebody? Because before, when I was the salesman in a suit as an advisor, right, it was always a zero-sum game. I always believed that in order for me to win, someone else would have to lose, right?
You're absolutely correct. I hate to
So if
say
I'm going to
that.
make more money, I got to somehow screw somebody over, for lack of a better term, right? But if I'm going to be a benevolent guy and be the good guy, well, I got to cut my commissions down to almost nothing so that somebody else makes more money, right? And it was a really crazy feast and famine type of career for one, because there's all these weird money stories about, giving, about this, I have to give or have to give away something in order to in order for them to receive and vice versa. Like one of us had to win. But when I switched it and when I started to meet guys that were millionaires saying, no, I actually don't even worry about how to make money. I just worry about how do I create value for people, because dollars follow value I create for other people. And so when I realized that, I said, wait a minute. So if I create a win-win for people, money becomes a natural byproduct. If I try to do what's right for people or try to help people get what they want, I'll get what I want too. And it sounds cliche, but it's amazing how mysterious it seemed to me as a money guy, as a financial advisor, right? And I couldn't figure that out. And most people couldn't, and most advisors don't get that. The funny thing is, way I do infinite banking, I cut down my fees to the bare minimum. I do max fund
It's
type
how it
policies.
works. It's how
Yeah.
it works.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Even
we
one of the
give
companies
up
I've used.
60 to 90% of our commission so that the other person
Uh-huh.
wins the game.
Yeah. The crazy thing is I still keep winning. Give you an example, right? There's a guy that claimed to be an infinite banker, but I knew he wasn't, right? Because I was friends with him and he was the traditional mindset, right? And he actually worked with a guy that was one of my friends who owned a turnkey company. And he ended up setting a policy on him. And I told my friend, I said, this guy is a schmuck. Like, he doesn't know what he's doing. You're basically going to get screwed, right? And he's like, well, he's giving me some business. I'll go with him. Well, flash forward 6 years later, my friend comes back to me, the guy that owns a turnkey company, and says, hey, you know what? Like, I've put $35,000 in this policy. I've only got $19,000 after 6 years. This is not what I thought I signed up for. In fact, this is not like what you described. And I said, no, it's not. So now understand that this guy, he was only putting in like 6,000 a year. So this agent probably made right around $7,000
Sure
on
did.
that deal, right? Well, by the time I showed him like how to design it, which I know you do too, right? By the time I showed him how to design it the right way, he's like, cool, I want to put in 50,000 a year. Well, wait, maybe I want to do 100,000. He couldn't decide. I said, just go with 50. You can always add one later, right? 50,000 a year, I still made 12,000. I made double what the other agent did, but the difference is that guy is getting way more cash return from his policy than he had with the other guy. He's going to break even in 4 years instead of 5, or in that case, it's going to be like 13 or 15 years, right? And that's the thing is that it might seem like I gave up something because I had to cut my costs way more than that guy did, but because it was the right thing, I still made more money. And most people don't have that abundant perspective about money. They think that, it's always, I got to screw somebody over, or it's got to be luck or exploitation to make money. And that's not the truth. It's all about serving people and solving problems.
And because I was, an advisor for so long, I try not to beat up on my fellow advisors and really and hit on them, but it's not their fault.
It's not.
It's really not. And that's why I feel bad. But
that's what
they do put their own set of glasses on, then they refuse to take them off, because the biggest people I have a hard time with in the infinite banking space, and I'm always excited when a client of mine with infinite banking says, oh, hey, would you mind talking to my advisor? I'm like, yes, absolutely. I think that'll be fun. And I get the advisor on the phone, and at the end of it, I want to choke him to death. I want to literally get on a plane, fly out there and choke him, because it's just like, wake up, dude. Like, what happened to you that like you seriously can't understand this? Because it's just your ignorance and the fact that you think somebody's taking money from you, which is the complete opposite, because somebody could take money, put it through the infinite banking concept, take that money right back and give it to this schmuck who decides then what to do with it, which is probably going to be put it in, class A mutual funds where he makes 5.5% up front and then dings them every single year with a fee so that the client barely ever makes, oh God, I don't even want to go down that rabbit hole, but you know where I'm going. So it's just a shame that, like, even though it's not their fault, because they're not taught about this, they're not taught how money really works. They're taught how to sell a product that pays the highest commission or charges the highest fee, so the financial companies win and the client loses. But that's just not the way it really needs to be. But unfortunately, people need to seek the knowledge, because what we do, what you teach, it's not knowledge that's readily available. It's not your banker telling you. It's not your financial advisor telling you. This is the knowledge you need to seek out. And I had to find it by finding wealthy people and learning that what they did with money was the complete opposite of everything I was taught to do with money. And remember, I was at a really high level, an IAR level where not to get into it, but fee-based advisory. And when I learned about this, I'm like, first, I was that asshole, excuse my language, but I was that asshole advisor that wanted to be, that doesn't work that way. There's no way that someone's pulling a fast one on you. And then all of a sudden I started understanding it. And I'm like, that makes all the sense in the world. Why wasn't I taught that? And I went down this path. And then what I started doing is connecting the dots with, I started meeting billionaires and multimillionaires. And I'd ask them the same question: where does your money go first? And I couldn't believe it. Without them knowing what I did, they almost all said, well, I put money in these specially designed whole life policies, and then I take it out and I do, business acquisitions. I do private lending. I do all these different things. And I'm just like, you don't say. You're doing that too? Because that guy over there is doing it too. And then that guy just said he's doing it. And I'm just like, what do you guys got? Like this secret society? No, they're just privy to this information because their advisors aren't just selling them something. They're beyond that, so they can find the truth about how money works. And I think that's the most fantastic thing. And I'm set out, like if you research, a lot of people like hate on me because of this, but I hold that title, America's #1 money mentor. It's not because I wanted it. Somebody gave that to me, but that is because I want to go out and I want to shed the truth of how money works. Same thing you're doing, which is why I was so excited to do this. Can we take a little sidebar and talk about your book, Beyond Rice and Beans? Talk about that.
Yeah. So how I retired twice sounds impressive. It's actually not, because retiring twice meant that I screwed up, right? Because the first time I was able to retire, I came out of retirement in 2007 and started teaching people how to get out of the rat race and do what I had done, right? Well, what the one problem is that when I was doing real estate, I was gambling with it. I was trying to bet on appreciation, not cash flow. It didn't seem as sexy. So I went for the sexy stuff, right? Plus, I also cut off my income streams to go work with a company where we did a bunch of education, like mentoring and things like that. And they said, well, you got to cut off your other income streams, your outside interests, so we can just focus on this company, which was the dumbest thing I should never have listened to them. I should have said, no, I'm going to keep these income streams because I got to be in integrity to teach what we're doing, right? Well, cut those off, and the next thing I know, I'm in the hole $16,000 a month. I go from like millionaire to upside down millionaire, and now I find myself in debt over $1 million. And so I had to dig back out. I didn't file for bankruptcy because I just refused to do it, which makes it easier when you're trying to do advising, right? But I had no money and no credit. So I had to basically crawl my way back out. I had to build it from nothing, right? So the first thing is I did focus on how to create value and whatnot. And then the other thing is like I had to start doing certain things with my money to find money. And that's what ended up happening. I stopped telling people how to get out of the rat race, because when I was back in it, I knew that I'd be out of integrity to teach somebody something I'm not doing myself. So I started teaching people how to get resourceful during that recession. And that's what people wanted anyways. They're saying, Chris, I would love to pay you to be my mentor, but I don't have the money. And I remember thinking in the back of my head, I wouldn't tell them this out loud, but in the back of my head is, I know your financial situation is better than mine. I bet you I can find it. And so that's what I did. I started trying to help people find money, like creative ways to pay off their debt, if it frees up cash flow. And it was all cash flow focused to find more money. And the crazy thing is and just what that book is really from hundreds of those people, what were like top 6 or 7 things that I did to find money for those people. On average, it was about $34,000 a year is what we found. And that was ongoing because we kept compounding that money. That doesn't even include creating passive income with it. That's just finding the money. And so that's what that ebook is on my website. It's all about.
I think it's fantastic. And it was the very first thing that I looked at, and I'm just like, wow, 7 secrets to free up cash today. And the other thing too is the name. Now, I don't know if a lot of people understand that, because, that kind of, if you know what that means, but if not, it kind of went right over your head. So our buddy, Dave Ramsey. So Dave Ramsey, a lot of people know, Dave Ramsey hates whole life, says it openly over and over again. Buy term, invest the difference in mutual funds, not buy term, invest the difference in stocks or ETFs. Oh no, buy term and invest in mutual funds. And, to get to that stage, what he says is, well, to get out of debt, we're going to use the envelope strategy, and we're going to put money in the envelopes, and you're going to eat rice and beans. And when you're sick of rice and beans, well, you just eat beans and rice. And that's probably where that came from, because beyond that, his strategy is great. You know, it's the snowball effect. It truly does work. And I give him a lot of credit for helping the millions of people he has. But his limited mindset, which we talked about, that limiting mindset of him thinking that he's got all the answers, where he just needs to take one step further. And if he just looked at the infinite banking concept, now what he does is he takes his rice and bean strategy, but now people don't have to eat rice and beans. They can go to Starbucks every single day. They can do the things that they're doing because now they've got a perpetual tailwind at their back because of the infinite banking concept. Now their money's working smarter instead of harder, or instead of them working harder. And that's the big difference. And I just can't understand how he doesn't embrace that. And it's got to be because, like what an advisor would say, there's got to be some financial reason he's been hardstead on what he does. But beyond,
I have an inside look on his mindset from that, because my wife was one of his first coaches. I actually married my competition.
Awesome. That's fantastic. Let's hear this. I've never heard this before.
Yeah. So she actually was one of his mentors, has been to his house, beautiful estate, right? And everything else out there in Tennessee. Here's what she discovered, right? Because she actually saw the same thing. She saw the scarcity type of teaching, and she's like, you can't get wealthy off of scarcity, right? But that's not who he's teaching. He is teaching, if you look at all the instructors, other than her, they were all basically broke ministers, people making maybe $30,000 a year at most, right? And that's Dave Ramsey's audience. People making $30,000 or $40,000 a year max. Those are the real people that he's talking to, right? He's talking to the people that don't have enough. They can't afford to do whole life. They can barely even afford to do term, right? So of course he's going to say buy term and invest the difference, once you can get there. He's trying to give them just the baby steps to even just get to zero, right? By the way, in his life, he does everything almost opposite of what he teaches. Because again, he's not his own, the demographic he's teaching. He's not broke himself. The guy has to have estate planning with insurance, right? He uses these permanent policies. He also buys lots and lots of real estate, even after he went bankrupt buying real estate. But he's like, don't go into debt. Yeah, he might do it debt-free because he's got a crap load of money pumping from his business to build or buy debt-free properties, right? But that's not how most people are. Again, different situations call for different strategies. The principles still remain the same, and going with that kind of that strategy of cash flow, of creating, be able to produce more than you consume, right? And so that's the thing. Dave Ramsey, he's doing the stuff you're talking about. He's doing it himself in his life, but he would never recommend that to other people because he doesn't believe that they're there yet. He doesn't think that they can handle that. So he's going to tell them something that, even if it's a complete blatant lie in some cases, and he teaches a lot of good stuff. But if you're just trying to, like create a budget, if you're a spendaholic, great, he's perfect for you. But if you're trying to go from middle class to upper class, or even to have a life of freedom, you got to graduate beyond what his stuff teaches. And you got to question everything that he teaches, especially when he talks about investing, he talks about insurance, he talks about, all those kind of things, right? Like how to pay off debt. Like I teach a very, very specific way about paying off debt that's different than his, but it's actually more impactful. It actually makes a bigger difference in your life. So, and by the way, not all debt's bad. I actually like debt if it's used wisely as a steward.
Yeah, I mean, Robert Kiyosaki did a fantastic job, and he's another person I respect, and, at the same token, have a lot of things negative to say, but I respect the fact of his thoughts and his teachings on what he did in his early career, teaching people about good debt and bad debt, the 4-quadrant system, and all the cash flow stuff he talked about, because it was genius. And prior to him, and, I'm a big real estate investor, and I have, on my podcast and in everything I do, every single person that gets into real estate, not all of them, but 90+% of them attribute it to that book in one way or the other, which is fantastic. And if that's not enough to give him a big shake and a big pat on the back to say thank you because you helped millions of people, then I don't know what is. But somehow he got off of the track too. And I think it was because of some of the similar reasons that we talk about. He took the bait and went down the wrong path. And you know what? Like if you meet him now, I've talked to people that have spoken to him now, I guess he's not a very happy man. And that's sad because he should be living, he should be living his perfect life. I mean, he literally did so many good things and made a lot of great decisions. He should be living his perfect day every day. So, it's just funny how people like are on the path and all of a sudden they get off the path. And I try to look at that and I try to say, where did that go wrong? Where did Dave Ramsey go wrong? And I agree with you, like Dave Ramsey's audience, but Why doesn't Dave Ramsey reinvent himself? And this is Dave Ramsey part 2, or that's stupid, but a secondary part to people that evolve, but he doesn't. He keeps them at that scarcity mindset level. And that's sad. It really is.
I mean, to do what we did, is hugely commendable, right? Like to leave an industry where you taught something and your pocketbook was tied to that, and to leave it and even just completely deny it, right? And say that was false, that does not work. I'm going to take this new path. That says something a lot about you, Chris. I mean, that there's just so few people that can question what they've been taught because there's self-interest in there. Same with Dave Ramsey. He built his whole model. Imagine if he just said, you know what? I think that's okay sometimes. If he did that, people would be in an uproar. They're like, no, you said debt is always bad, right? Again, strategies are not always or nevers. You cannot ever, notice I'm always saying like never. You can never. You can never tell people always or never when it comes to a strategy because they change with circumstances and time. But principles, like I believe in, consuming, less than you produce, right? Living within your means. That is a true principle. Absolutely. That should be taught and enforced. The strategy just depends on what you're doing with it and what kind of steward you are and how you can make that money work for you.
Yeah, I always tell people, it's definitely different phases or however you want to, structure that. But I always tell people you can't know where you're going unless you know what your perfect day looks like. What does your perfect day look like from the second you open your eyes to the second they close? You literally should be able to, every person that can visualize what retirement would look like or where they're going should be able to walk through their perfect day. Everything. Who are you next to? What does it look like? What do you see? What do you smell? What is every step of your day? I spent way too much time doing this. My perfect day, one day I'll make it a book, but it's literally, I know what it looks like. And every day I have one new thing from that perfect day added to my life. But it's a process. It's a journey. It should be a journey. It should be so big. But once you know what that looks like, then you can backtrack and take the steps. And if step number 1 means you should eat rice and beans and be, a scarcity mindset, well, that's step 1. But maybe step 2, 3, 4, 5, you have to evolve out of that scarcity mindset and start seeing it as an abundance mindset. And I just think that's where a lot of people go wrong is it is a mindset problem. We get stuck in that thing saying, I can't do this. I was told not to. We take advice from people that never lived our perfect day and people that never do the things we want to do, but yet they stop us from getting there. And it's sad. Like infinite banking, for example. In a moment, I want to take a trip back in time to kind of know how you got started in that. But, with the infinite banking concept, it's how many people tell you that, oh, that doesn't work. That sounds too good to be true. There's no way it works that way. Great. If that's what you believe, then it's not going to work because you're never going to take that next step to see that it actually does work, and it has for hundreds of years. But sorry about your luck. You're right. You don't believe that can ever happen for you, and therefore it won't, because whatever you believe, whatever you can dream, you can achieve. Napoleon Hill said it best, and his book stands above almost any other one because that book is truth.
Yep. It's just like Henry Ford said, whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. You're right. It's true.
That's why Henry Ford had a row of buttons on his desk. So he wasn't a smart man, but he had smart people that he pushed buttons for when he needed that. That is a sign of genius.
Absolutely.
And unfortunately, some people think, oh, no, that's a sign of someone not being smart. And that's what happened to him. But how did you hear, you come from a financial advisor and all this stuff. How did you ever stumble upon this? Because it's the anti of everything we learned. You do know that.
It started actually with a guy I had trained to be a financial advisor.
Really?
It's ironic. He actually quit to go do real estate investing with his dad. So they partnered up to go start buying properties, right? And of course, in my arrogant, financial advisor mind, it's like, good luck with that. I've heard people go chase after their dreams and you'll come running back when you're broke, That's sad. I didn't say that to him verbally, but that's what was going on in my head. Well, end of 2005, I thought I'd give him a call. I wish him a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. It was right in between, that week in between, right? Well, I call him up and I said, well, how's it going? And he said, man, it's awesome. Like, my dad has doubled his income from being a professor at the local university. And this has only been 4 months, by the way. I was like, bull crap. That's too good to be true, right? Just like you had said. And he's like, no, man, like, we're legitimately doing it. This has actually been working. I'm like, come on. And then we started getting this battle. Now, he didn't know this at the time, but I was already questioning everything that I was learning there, right? Because I started realizing that, these numbers aren't adding up. There's something wrong. Plus I was stock coaching. So I was teaching people how to do investing outside of financial advisors already. So my mind was already starting to open up, right? Well, we got in this debate about what's better, stocks or real estate. And he finally stopped me and said, Chris, what principles are you teaching your clients? What do you mean by principles? He's like, that's part of the problem. Okay, let me ask you this. I'll dumb it down for you because he's pretty direct. He's like, Chris, how many of your clients are truly financially free where they don't worry about money? Not just retired, but they don't worry about money. They have an abundant mindset, like you had mentioned, right? And I said, none. Because even those retired doctors, they turn on CNN, they're back in fear mode again. I have to calm them down, right? He's like, good job, Chris. Way to go. 4 years and you still haven't got somebody who's financially free yet. All right, Chris, how about this? Because if anybody has this figured out, it should be you guys as financial advisors. So how many of you are financially free, not off of commissions you're earning, but actually off of doing the investments you've been recommending to these people that haven't retired yet, that haven't become free yet? And I thought about it. I said, none. Maybe one guy. I thought one guy in my office that seemed like he was very high level clients and stuff. Found out later when he got fired from that company, he was scrambling for work again. He wasn't free either. Nobody, no financial advisor was free. Even the ones I'd known that had been doing this since the mid to late 70s, like guys that had been in that industry forever, still could not retire themselves. And he said, well, there's a problem.
Oh my God, I just talked about this in the last podcast. I don't mean to keep cutting you off. There's just, seriously, the universe brought the two of us together because this is getting really strange. Keep going. I'm sorry. That was really bizarre what you just said, because that's why I left the one company I was with. I kept looking at the most successful guys that everybody touted and held up on the podium. And I'm like, yeah, but he's 75. Why is he still here? If he makes all this money and he's got this great pension and this thing, like, why isn't he living his perfect day? Why is this guy here and he's miserable every day? Why is that guy still there who never talks to anybody? Like, what am I missing here? And I learned it. I figured it out, but keep going with that because it's dead on.
Well, you're absolutely right. Because when I thought about it, it's like, well, those not living on their commission renewals, right? Because you could say, oh yeah, they could be free. Well, that's commission renewals. That's not really off the investments. They haven't got to work either. And so I said, all right, well, I'm listening. He's like, I'm not going to tell you the answer because I don't think you really care. I'm like, dadgummit, you just got me to admit I'm wrong. Like, tell me something. He's like, all right, if you're really serious, I know you've already read Rich Dad several times and thought somehow it supported you as a financial advisor. That was BS. So instead, go get this other Kiyosaki book called Who Took My Money, which rips into mutual funds, right? By the way, I just dropped my securities license before then. So I was already starting to see mutual funds suck, right? So he's like, all right, well, go get that book and then go listen to this radio show with these guys locally as an AM talk radio show. These were real estate retired guys, right? These guys were financially free in their 30s, right? These young guys. And I was like, okay, I'll do that. And so I started to listen to their show and I listened to that book. I listened to the book. I got the book that day, listened to the audiobook. I said, all right, yes, mutual funds suck. I get it. All right, what else? And these guys, they would just talk about principles on their show. And eventually I started to get introduced into their circles of what they were doing with real estate and things like that. And it opened my eyes because when I saw what was possible, because before I was always like, well, you got to earn a bunch of returns in your mutual funds. And then you got to live off less than the interest if you don't want to outlive your money. Because they used to say 4% back in my day. Like, you got to live on 4%. But the truth is that was based on 1970s calculations.
Absolutely was.
So the newer number became 2 or 3% was more likely to help you do it, especially as we're living longer. Well, even if I did 3%, I'm like, man, if I want $60,000 a year today, I've got to have $2 million saved up. That's ridiculous. But if I had the same $2 million and all I made was 1% a month or 12% a year, well, that's $200,000 a year. That's a drastically different lifestyle than before. And all of a sudden, there was hope. There became options and possibilities. And so I try to make it work with the both worlds. I stopped attending my trainings. Ironically, my practice in my financial advising business skyrocketed when I stopped attending my trainings with financial advisors and started teaching my own thing as I was starting to learn it. Eventually, I couldn't make it work anymore. I had to just quit. So in March of 2006, I said, I'm done. I'll never teach about money again. I will just go to the local university, teach ballroom dancing, and I'll be a mortgage broker. That's it. And that's what I started doing for a few months until I started to figure out how to do it myself and retire and said, what's next, right?
And the ballroom dancing part comes out because I have that.
There it
like
is.
It's just big and circled right there on my sheet, like ballroom dancer. That doesn't fit. I got to know about that. Oh man, that was
in
great.
the early 2000s, I was one of the nation's top amateur ballroom dancers right before I became a financial planner. So yeah, it was awesome. It was fun. It was a fun time. And I was teaching at that local university for a while, just volunteering my time. I wasn't getting paid other than a few classes I substituted. They paid me under the table, but that was it, you know?
And I love something you said there. You brought something full circle from the beginning to what you just said. You probably didn't realize it, but we talked about compound interest earlier. Do you believe in compound interest? And your answers were great, very in line with kind of what I say about it. And then you just talked about how we're taught to believe that we need to have $2 million at this, this rate, 3%, whatever rate the advisor tells you, and we're going to live off that. And that's literally what almost every single person thinks. So they're working up to this goal of having, I need 2 million and I can make 60,000.
Right.
And then that's it. But that's simply because they don't understand that your money, when it's sitting, is not in your control, and therefore it doesn't work for you. You are out working for it. That's why all these surgeons and these doctors that you talk to, when the market goes sideways or goes down, they're freaking out in scarcity mode because they've only been taught to give up control of their money their whole career. They're great at what they do, but they don't know how to make money work. So if those people that built up that $2 million, if they just took one additional step, just changed one thing, and that one thing allowed them to move that money the way banks do, the way that wealthy do, because their money's always in motion, always. It's never sitting anywhere. It's always in motion. You talk to a billionaire and ask them, how much money do you have at your bank? Most of them will say not much, because they don't believe in banks. Their money is out there working. It's marching. And they never come home and look at their couch and see their money sitting on the couch, eating their potato chips, drinking their soda, watching their TV. Heck no. Their money's out there working. Their money never comes home. It doesn't get vacation. It never takes breaks. The food truck doesn't even stop by their money, because their money's out there working harder than that person, which is the true financial freedom. The second you learn how to make your money work, the second you learn how to take back control, which is so simple, it involves changing one thing. But most people, unfortunately, will never understand what that one thing is. Because if I said to them, I said, all you need to do to change your entire financial life is change one thing. They would be like, oh yeah, what is that one thing? I can do that. And I tell them what it is. And they're like, oh yeah, oh. And then that mindset steps in. Oh yeah, somebody told me this. Oh, that won't work. Oh, I can't do that. Great, then don't. Because I'm not gonna kick your ass over there to make you do it. I just gave you the answer, and that is the answer. Don't take it from me. Learn what the Rockefellers did back in their day. Why is it that they did what they were able to do? And it just I find the infinite banking concept, and some people look at it as like a swear word. So then I just say, okay, privatized banking. You ever hear about that? Oh yeah, it's the same damn thing. Like it's the same thing. It's just called something different, like privatized banking. Oh yeah, that's what my wealthy friends do. Okay, great. Let's call it privatized banking. Like the thing that I never will ever fully understand is why people can't just embrace what that is, because they want to make it all about the whole life. Oh, Dave Ramsey said whole life sucks as an investment. Dave Ramsey's right. If you went to the insurance store and you bought a standard off-the-shelf whole life and you shoved all your money in that would be the worst thing you probably could do with it. Yeah. Because that's what you think. You think that everything is just a square little ball. It's not. And if you just understood that it's not the same thing and they can be used different ways, and the whole life is really the least important thing about the privatized banking or infinite banking. The whole life is nothing more than the machine we use to move the money, because it's the only machine on earth that does what it can do. The only one. And I keep telling people on all these things, I say, if anyone can bring me a vehicle that does this, and this better than what I'm using, which is this stupid, silly whole life designed a very specific way, then I will change all my presentations. I'll erase all my current YouTube videos and I'll start using the vehicle. Does anyone have it? And no one's brought me anything yet. And you know what? For hundreds of years, no one's ever had another vehicle that can do that. And for hundreds of years in the future, there probably never will be, because insurance companies are the only ones that can do what they do. So I didn't mean to go on a tangent, but it's just, obviously I get pretty fired up over this stuff. Well, and I get pretty mad because people don't know about it.
Yeah, you're describing me up until 2006, actually. I mean, I was for 4 years in that industry. And what did I tell people when they asked me about whole life? I said, rip off. Like, waste of time, you'll make 1 or 2%. Yeah, it's expensive. You make 1 or 2% a year. You do better investing in the market. And by the way, I was actually one of the first guys that started using IULs. Like I started switching to that around 2004 before they were really getting popular, because someone actually came to me and taught about we're talking about annuities. And the guy trained us. He said the whole example of losing 50%, gain 100%, 25% return, but you divide by 2, right? That whole thing, right? But you only broke even on your cost. like when we were taught that, we all got that question wrong. When he said, if you lose 50%, what do you need to make to get back to where you were? We're all like 50%. He's like, wrong. You need 100% to get back to breaking even.
Check this out. The drawdown effect right there.
Yep. See, that's when he taught that to us, we're like, wait. And we started to question it, right? Some of us in the office started questioning. We're like, hold on. If we would invest from 1995 to 2005, right? Or 94 to 2004, we would have had more money despite losing all the 90s, the roaring 90s. We would have still had more money being like in index funds. So we're like, let's go index. So we started going more index life insurance, right? But when I started to learn about those things a little bit more, and I started teaching other agents when they asked me questions about it, I started to pop open the hood deeper. I'm like, there's a lot of things wrong with this. This isn't all it's cracked up to be. This has to work in the perfect vacuum of space to really get the kind of returns I'm talking about, right? And then, so I was convinced, but I still thought whole life was horrible. Well, of course, when I started meeting these guys who are in real estate and they're millionaires, right? What did I find out? They're all using whole life, just like you said.
Every single one of them.
They're all using it. They're all rave about it. They're all talking about infinite banking. And here's the crazy thing. Infinite banking, the kind they were using, was base premium only. No cash value for 2 years, kind of infinite banking. They're thinking 5-10 years before you can even start using it to buy a car, right? And so they were even doing it in ways that we know can be less efficient, and that's the thing that blew my mind. I was like, wait a minute, we could do better. That's why I started learning about 2007, 2008. It's like, wait, I can't overfund this like I asked. And then that guy told me, he lied to me, said he couldn't do it. You can do this. You can be flexible with this. You can make this work better than an index universal life and do all the same things that you thought that you could do there, but you can do it here with less risk and possibly better returns. It blew my mind what was possible. And that's the thing is that I remember a good friend asked me a question once. He said, Chris, if something you thought was true really wasn't, when would you want to know about it? I was like, well, now. He's like, are you sure? Are you really sure? Because if you argue with me on this, then you're not really open. I'm like, okay, I'm open, and that's where learning happens. That's where you can create new levels of wealth and you can progress those stages like you mentioned.
Wow, that was profound what you just said. That was I love that, because that's it right there. It's like, do you really want the truth? The truth is going to hurt. Do you really want the truth? And it does. The truth hurts. But the people that really take that next step and see and live their perfect lives are the people that understood that the truth hurt, but they still wanted it. It's like, right. Punch me again. Punch me again. I know it's going to hurt, but punch me again. It's just like, hey, if that's what it takes to learn the truth, then it shouldn't matter what the pain is. And, I love the whole thing about, I teach a lot about, money and debt and how debt can be a good thing. And people are always like, oh, but that's going to cost money. Oh, there's a cost for the insurance. Oh, the line of credit using that, I got to pay interest. And I say, you missed the whole thing. Cost is only an issue in the absence of value. We talked about the value first. You were all into the value, but now all of a sudden you're focused only on the cost. The cost is not going to go away, and that has to happen for you to get the value. What do you want? You got to pick one. Which one? Well, I don't know. Well, you want the value. You already told me you do. Cost is only an issue in the absence of value. A wise man once told me that. I didn't understand it. Another wise mentor of mine told me back a long time ago, he said, I'm going to give you the biggest advice I can ever give you. He said, give your best stuff away for free. So he said to me, and I'm like, whoa, Greg, hold on a second, bud. Like, if I give everybody my best stuff for free, nobody's going to need me. He said, you know what? That's exactly what I used to think. And he says, if you keep thinking that way, you'll never do it. But he says, what actually will happen is, he said, the exact opposite. You give your best stuff away for free. There will be a small percentage of people that will take your information, never thank you, and never need you ever again. And bid them farewell. He said, but the 90+% of the people will respect you, admire you, and want everything you have because you gave them your best. So which one do you want? Do you want to keep your best stuff and only give it to people that pay you, or do you want to give it all away for free and then live that life? And I said, well, that's easy. And I started doing that.
That's awesome. That's a great way to live, man.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm, just working on my first retirement, but you see, retirement, it's a funny word for me, and it's a word I don't believe in. When I talk to people, I never use the word retirement because I don't believe in retirement. I think retirement for me is just the day where I decide what and when and how I want to do things. And it doesn't need to have a name. It's just when that day happens, when I literally feel that when I wake up, I can do anything I want, how I want, with what I want, and I don't have to do something to get that. That to me is this quote unquote retirement. But, I'm not, knocking the word, because we got to kind of put a label to it. But really, to me,
Call it
it's
financially
just
independent.
Yeah. Freedom, financial freedom, all those things. But, a lot of people think retirement's that day you punch the clock for the last time, you come home, you get in your sailboat and you sail out, and then the storm hits and you're right back. It's funny how it works out. Well, look, we could go on forever and ever. I don't even know how long we've went with this, but it's just been freaking awesome. And it's just, I meet so few people like you, I think, which is why I was so excited. And I did extensive work in trying to figure it out, what exactly is this? And it was just awesome, man. I don't know do you have any final advice you could give to my audience? Because my audience is going to eat this up.
I would just say, just know that there's always hope. There's always answers. There's always a way to be able to create the life that maybe you're dreaming of now, or maybe you haven't been able to dream of yet. But I'm living proof of it. If I can go over $1 million in debt and come back out of it financially independent, 7 years later, you guys can too. There's nothing that's stopping you other than your own mind. Just be open, be willing to recognize that there is truth. There is things you can use to create and create more. And that's the thing. Money's not as hard as it has to be.
I love that. That's the perfect way to end it. So Chris, if people want to learn more about you, want to get one of those Beyond Rice and Beans books, and I got to get one of those too.
Quickest read ever.
Yeah. How many pages is it? Because it looks like a monster right there.
It's 28 pages with page breaks. So that's the kind of writer I am. I hate writing. I'd much rather do
I love it.
my podcast show, which is 20, 25 minutes, right? I don't like to mince words. So therefore, chapters, some of them are 1 page.
That's awesome. I just love it.
You'll get through it in a half an hour easily.
I just finished reading, the book, Ray Dalio's book, Principles. Oh, yeah. And that sucker's 700. And I tell you, I'm glad at the end of the book, I'm like, whew, I made it. Same thing with Creatures from Jekyll Island. I'm like, oh my God, I made it. Books like that, Shrugged. I read it and read it and read it. It's a breath of fresh air. So how do people get a hold of you? How did they learn from you? And how did they get that book?
Yeah, just 2 places. You can either check out my website, moneyripples.com, or just follow my podcast as well, The Chris Miles Money Show.
That's awesome. Well, I'm certainly going to be following it. So folks, get on that podcast, absorb it, because honestly, Chris can teach you a lot. I mean, Chris can teach you things that will change your entire life, and you just need to take that step, which brings me back to that journey you're all on to becoming a rebel banker. It involves taking that leap. Now, I already challenged you to read the book, but now I'm going to add a second challenge. Get his book and read it. 28 pages. Mine's 80 or 90 pages. His is 28. Read his first and then go on. That's your challenge. So now you got 3 things you need to do. Go out there, take action, and start figuring out what your perfect day looks like. Because if you don't know what you're working for, you'll never get there. Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Real Estate Money School. We'll see you next time.